of the responsibilities I take probably most seriously as a mayor is ensuring that Danville remains a safe place for families, businesses, and visitors. Public safety, I think, is the foundation of a thriving community. When people feel safe in their neighborhoods, they're able to live, work, learn, and connect with one another in meaningful ways. This morning I'm here with Chief Tom Rossberg, Chief of Police since late 2024. We've had some really good news in the year that you've been here, Chief, and I want to thank you for that. And I'm going to ask you a few questions today. As we found out just recently, Danville, again, was named the safest city in California. And some people say, oh, we're the safest small city. Well, actually, we are the single safest city in all categories. They give a hall pass to the large cities because they'll have a lot more crime, and so they weigh them separately. But we're fortunate to have you and the predecessors before you who have laid foundations and got us to a point of slowly everybody adding. Each chief has added their own kind of nuance and a way to tackle keeping our community safe. We started off years ago with Proposition 47, which seemed pretty devastating, and it was for a while with our community. And state laws change, and we have to adapt to that. But I want to talk about today about the things that, what are the tools and the things that make us safe? And I've been on the council 31 years, so I've seen all but one chief that we've had here. And I think behind me in a photograph there are most of the chiefs there, which we're adding you, by the way. You have to have one full year. You got it. So we'll change the photograph.
Past probation. Thank you.
But we've always used the term community policing and community partnerships. So how does that play into policing? And is that an important tool? And maybe you can explain how that works.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Community policing is very important because it is a partnership. It's not just the police department. It's a combined effort as we collectively value public safety and we work together for a common goal. As the police department focuses on different areas of safety and enforcement, that we work with the public on and work with the town council on what are the priorities. Because effectively, we are enforcing laws that are already on the books. Prop 47, Prop 57, the law enforcement in general will adjust to the rules that are given. We are just enforcing the rules and the laws that are out there. And the community policing aspect is just one aspect of law enforcement. As we engage the public, as we go to have coffee with the cops, as we go to the schools, and as we go to the parks and we're seeing the kids, that's one side of it for sure. Absolutely. That's an important part of it. Doing car stops and giving tickets, that's another aspect of it. But it's a multi-pronged approach as we do our part to ensure that people feel safe in their community. To me, it's a testament when I see individuals that have to leave for work and go to San Francisco at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, that they feel comfortable in their community to get their exercise in and go on a run at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And we have, one of the things I see is we always say, when in doubt, when we tell a neighbor or somebody, when in doubt, if something doesn't look right, please call the police. And some people say, well, I don't want to bother the police. I mean, what's your thought on that, and how many calls a year for service do we get?
We had last year in 2025, we got about 28,000 calls.
Wow, out of 43,000 people.
Right.
Wow.
So 28,000 contacts with the public, whether it's initiated from the public calling in or officers initiating efforts to, have contact with the public. And so lots of contacts out there. So I would always say, if you see something, call. The public knows what is suspicious in their neighborhood. They know what's out of place. They know when somebody is gone and suddenly they're hearing some noises at that person's house. The officers don't know. They might not even hear it, but the neighborhood knows when things don't feel right or just something is off. Give us a call. That's our job, to investigate. And maybe it's a gardener that's just, going their weekly rounds and everything else. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's something a little more suspicious. But I would always encourage the public to give us a call.
And it always seems to turn out that when you add up 28,000 calls for service and our police officers making those contacts, without knowing it, we may have prevented something that could have been amiss. When they get there, it might not be, but that's a preventative tool in itself, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because you never know, just by being out in the public, how many times we've persuaded somebody. Just think of the situation when you're behind a police officer. You're like, oh, there's a police officer in the area, and you're the mayor, or the police officer's behind you. You're driving a little more carefully.
Oh, I always drive.
I know you do.
I drive.
I know you do. But when or when we make a car stop, everybody else is aware of the lights and sirens. They all go a little slower. So the point of us, doing traffic enforcement is not really to, enforce. It is obviously to enforce the law for that specific person, but it's also to let everybody else know we're here. And so if our criminals in the area know that we're out and about, hey, those cops are everywhere. Well, yeah, that's the message we want to take, because we want everybody to feel safe. That our law enforcement is out there. They're doing their job to make the community safe.
Speaking of safety and things like that, when people, I don't think the residents realize that, traffic enforcement, how that plays a role in safety. And people perceive that, there's quotas and things like that, and they're writing tickets. What's the purpose of a ticket, and what are the chances that when you're stopped, you're actually going to get a ticket?
So there's a multi reasons of why we do traffic enforcement. There's the education. If I can educate you, pull you over, and say, hey, do you know you're going a little fast? Oh, I wasn't paying attention. If I can educate you, well, now I've made an impression upon you. I'm also maybe going to give you, engineering. We have traffic lights. That keeps everybody safe. Traffic lights, traffic stop signs, that keeps people safe. Well, sometimes I have to actually do the enforcement side, the other E as well, by giving you that ticket. Hey, it looks like our records show that we pulled you over 3 times, sir.
Yeah.
Hey, this time, maybe this time it will sit in, because I'm going to give you this little piece of paper.
Change that behavior.
Change that behavior. But if I can change that behavior, make you go a little bit slower, not be on your cell phone, maybe we prevented a future car accidents. There's an inverse relationship with tickets and with traffic accidents. So the more tickets are right, inversely, there's less traffic accidents. And really, that's the goal here. If we can save you some money with your insurance, if we can save somebody from getting hurt, a vehicle hitting a pedestrian or a bicyclist or an e-bicyclist, or heaven forbid, a child. That's the reason why we're out there doing car stops, to enforce the law, but also, we also know who's in our community. The more we are out there stopping people for law violations, hey, sir, can I get a driver's license? Do you know you have a warrant? I didn't know I had a warrant. They usually know when they have a warrant.
Right.
Hey, what brings you here today? Oh, I'm just driving the area. Why are we driving the neighborhood here? And now, and that's why our officers, especially at night, during the day, are just out there stopping people, because they're trying to enforce the law. We're trying to keep our community safe by keeping people with ill intent. Some of our bad actors, they're trying to commit some crimes. We're looking for violations for sure. But if I can find a violation that leads to a warrant arrest, that somebody goes to jail because his ultimate intention was to commit crimes, maybe he has some tools in there to break into cars.
Well, we're going to get to the technology.
All right,
how do
there
we
you go.
do
All right,
that?
all right.
So the bottom line, what I think I hear is that there's a direct relationship. The more citations and stops we make for traffic violations, the lower incidence
Absolutely.
for traffic safety in terms of accidents. And has that been over a long period of time that we've been able to plot that and see the difference? Years that we don't issue very many, accidents go up. Is that pretty clear?
It's very clear. You look at the bar graphs and the lines. When the tickets are up and the traffic contacts are up, then our traffic accidents are down. When we have, less officers, or not less officers, when we do less contacts, then our accidents go up. We all need to be reminded. Our kids need to be reminded. Don't touch it, that's hot. Well, as drivers, sometimes we get complacent and we forget. And so we need to be reminded through that traffic enforcement stop to remind you, hey, slow down, don't touch your cell phone. Hey, I'm going to give you a physical reminder that's going to encourage you to go to court.
So tickets are to change your behavior. most of the stops, to change your behavior. If it's clear the behavior is going to change, you might not get that ticket. But if it's clear that you need that extra reinforcement, that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
But most importantly, all of it's about making, saving lives and making things safer.
Absolutely, yes.
So let's talk about, we've touched on it a little bit, but about proactive policing and prevention. And we have several programs, and I know we use volunteers for this. If I were a thief and things, can you
Right.
kind of talk about what are those tools that we have? And again, it's part of community policing, but it's really on the proactive prevention side. What are those tools that you have available here in Danville?
One of the programs we have, is the VIP program, our Volunteers in Patrol. They are community members that are looking for the opportunity to serve in the community and to volunteer hours. We usually look for about 8 hours a month, and we have about 30 to 40 volunteers. They fluctuate over time.
And they wear white uniforms and drive a police car.
That's exactly right. And they're out in the public. They're our force multiplier. We have a small police department of about 30 officers. Well, ultimately we've doubled that by having 30 more volunteers that are driving vehicles out there. Now our public sees a patrol vehicle, police car. Hey, they're going to go a little slower. Hey, we've just changed some behavior because they're going a little slower because we have more
Amazing
vehicles
effect.
Amazing effect, cause and effect there. And so, as well as some of the things that the VIPs do is vacation house checks. When you go on vacation, you give us a call, you let us know.
And is that free?
That's a free service.
Free service.
Free
Great.
service. We're taking, something we are giving to the community. You tell us when you're going to be on vacation, and these are the times. You're going to tell us and fill out this little form that what visitors you anticipate, what cars you have are going to be home. When the gardeners come by, and then we go by once a day and check on your home, making sure everything's okay.
Actually get out of the car sometimes and actually go check the gates and the doors.
Check the gates, check the doors, check the windows. Nothing's broken. Nothing looks amiss. If you have a paper, if you have an Amazon package, we'll kind of either put the package, in the back, or we put it out of sight. Because some of our individuals, our thieves, will drive around and look for boxes that are piled up on our porch. They must be out of town. That might be a good house that I might want to stop and visit. And so this VIP program is just great to get out and to engage the community and to provide that service.
We see those people. There's lots of events. In fact, I think there was 26 or 27 downtown events. So the role and responsibility also is our volunteers in patrol. They participate in those. Maybe you can explain what's their role and what are they trying to accomplish there, along with our sworn officers.
Again, with our police department, we can't be everywhere at once, but having our VIPs, they are there to add and to extend our service. So there was actually a recent activity just yesterday, and there was VIPs down there and just answering questions and just being visible, being in the public.
The doggy stroll.
Yes,
that's where they were.
That's
yeah.
exactly right. And these events come up and they sign up for it, and our VIPs are excellent in providing an extra service, right? We recently started fingerprinting, live scanning. It's a service we had kind of pre-COVID. We kind of got away from it during COVID, and we recently started providing the service of live scanning. Hey, go to our VIPs. Hey, are you guys available to live scan? The public, you have to pay the DOJ,
Right, there's a fee for
the
that.
fee associated with the state requires. They come in and they make an appointment, and our VIPs are doing the live scanning.
So what are the uses? What would make somebody need to have their fingerprints? Is because they're volunteering somewhere? What are the kind of gamut of the things that require that?
The state requires anybody volunteering with schools or sports teams or within churches, anywhere that, usually there's association with kids. That way they get live scanned.
That's great.
And so, it's great. We want our kids safe.
So during the week, 5 days a week, people can call up, and it's our volunteers that help operate that
Yes.
system.
Yes.
That's fantastic. What role do you think all of that plays in ultimately keeping us safe? So do the house checks work? Do we have evidence that actually is accomplishing something? They drive the neighborhoods. They also use our vehicles and place them strategically around downtown businesses. So how do you think all of that plays in helping keep Danville safe?
Well, the statistics are saying that it's working. What we're doing,
That's true.
Okay, what we're doing is working. Can we do more? Absolutely. Do I want double my VIP force? Absolutely. Just more people out there, more police cars out there, and so all those little things encourage our criminals to go somewhere else. Not that I'm encouraging them to go to Walnut Creek, or to San Ramon, but I'm trying to really keep the Danville community safe. And so having our VIPs out there with our police officers combined out in the public is changing behavior to make Danville the safest city.
So how do, if the citizen wanted to become a VIP, how do they do that? What's the process? Do they have to take training, a class?
That's a great question. And the very first thing they have to do is get an idea of the Danville Police Department. We do that by having our Citizens Academy.
Right.
We do
That's
that.
coming up?
It's coming up. April 15th is our first class.
Great.
So really making a plug for that. Sign-ups right now, go to the website.
And those are free?
Those are free. It's a 6-week class, and on Wednesday nights, about 3 hours each night, and you get to see different aspects, investigations. We do some car stops. We bring out the SWAT team. We bring out the dog. We do a force option simulator where you get a chance to kind of wear the belt and see a video screen and how will you react and kind of put you in a high stress situation in a safe environment. And it's a great opportunity for them to see what it's like. And then if they ultimately go through and they enjoyed the process, they can apply to the sheriff's office through the SAFES program to be a VIP down here in Danville.
That's great. It's an exciting opportunity, April 15th. You can go to the Danville website and sign up. And I've found friends who have actually done it. They decided they didn't want to be the VIP. Maybe they didn't have the time, but they were so appreciative to learn what we're doing and how we do it, which I think is valuable in itself. So I said we're going to get back to technology and innovation. So I recall after Proposition 47 passed, the big cities didn't want to have so many felonies on their books, so they took a large number of felonies, which were the majority, and moved them down to misdemeanors. And most of those, even if somebody broke into your house and that value was under $995, the officer would write a ticket, person signs it to say they'll show up in court, and cite release them. That had a very negative reaction in our community, and for a while we were a target. And I think that's one of the impetus for us to switch to find technological solutions. Can you describe how technology is helping keep Danville safe and our residents here?
Absolutely. So with different technology tools that our investigators use and our officers use to kind of, I wouldn't create a bubble, but essentially kind of create this safety net that informs officers of different tools. So when we do car stops, and we ultimately will use the computer, and there's different databases out there to recognize, hey, does this person have a criminal history? Does he have priors? Does he have priors for certain things? And it gives them, again, using that technology allows the officers to, dig a little more, or, hey, are they on probation? It's what they're saying is true versus what the computer database is telling us. There's some technology there. Because in our experience, sometimes some of our criminals don't always tell the truth.
Yeah, but with that technology, then we have 2 camera systems,
yes,
and they provide 2 different things. And one of those would alert every officer on duty something's amiss. Somebody has just come into our bubble, as you want to say. What is that, and how accurate is that system?
So it's a great system. It's called the Flock system. So it works with a network of other cameras. So we've got cameras all over the city, and many cities in the Bay Area and the state have this system as well. It's a great system because now we've identified a vehicle that is criminally related.
So it reads the license plate.
It reads the license plate. It's a license plate reader.
So an officer also has similar technology into their car as well as the stationary system.
That's right.
So they could be driving through a neighborhood, and it could pop up, there's a car that's stolen,
right,
or it's got a warrant associated with that. So is that a fast system, or does it take hours, or how fast does this work?
It's as fast as we can put the information in the system. So if we get some information, we plug it into the system, and now system-wide, the entire system, not just the town of Danville bubble, has that information. But hey, this car is this person is wanted for a crime. And now you plug it in, license plate 123 ABC, and now it enters, and the entire flock system is alerted, hey, this person is just triggered as a felony vehicle. And now, ultimately, the hunt's on, and we're all looking for that vehicle and looking forward to stopping, maybe it's a typo. Maybe the license plate read it wrong. Maybe it didn't. And maybe, ultimately, we've stopped a lot of a criminal who's coming in that ultimately led and we've stopped some crimes and prevented crimes or arrested people because they're driving a vehicle associated with it. So it's really relied upon the officers once we make that contact, establish that crime to enter it into the system. And as much as we can take it in, put it in, we can take it right back out. So don't think it's in there forever.
I've seen it work pretty fast. You're being humble. I saw where I think every officer responded right near one of our freeway off-ramps. There was a gentleman who stopped to get some ice cream. Had no intention to stop in Danville, but actually wanted an ice cream. And that flock system picked up, and that individual had a warrant out for murder. And without incident, the total surprise, the person was apprehended, put in jail, and then and moved off to the appropriate jurisdiction.
It's an amazing system. It really is. And it really helps the community and all of the communities that have it to be safe, because there's reading license plates, or reading it, and ultimately it's associated with, sometimes, because we don't always know who the driver is. Right. We just know the vehicle.
Right.
Hey, here's a crime. Here's the license plate, and it's associated. Now we can stop that vehicle, because maybe a neighboring city might pick up, hey, we had a felony vehicle associated with this license plate, and somebody else stop and identify. Well, now we know they're driving this car at this time. They're the registered owner. We just had a license plate. We didn't know who the driver was. Well, another officer stops and identifies them. Well, now we've got reasonable suspicion. We got probable cause. Now we can write warrants to the judges. Hey, judge, this vehicle was in town on this date.
Right.
And here, 10 minutes later,
establishing timelines.
We get timelines, and ultimately we can, solve some crimes.
So that has actually two purposes as we think about it. So on the front end, it can identify fairly quickly, the things that you described, a license plate, and or maybe a person who's driving that vehicle. But also it happens if somebody saw that it turned out that maybe there was a house that was burglarized during the day. And the officer says, "What did you see?" to the neighbor. "Oh, I saw a white Toyota." Describe how fast and what we can do with only that little information.
So the system is amazing in the fact that we can enter as many descriptors as we want, or as little descriptors. Is it a 4-door? And we can narrow the search and broaden the search as much as we want to really get the vehicle we want. Just with it's a white Toyota.
So you could almost say, let's eliminate all the Danville license plates. Let's take only between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he said, white vehicle and a foreign make.
That's exactly right.
And it's that accurate.
It's that accurate.
Wow.
Here's a situation that just came up recently. Over in Alamo, an individual was at the ATM, and he got robbed at the ATM. Tragic, horrible. But our victim said, hey, the vehicle has a black spot on the bumper, maybe replace the bumper. Our Danville investigation sergeant heard that, because the officer had the presence of mind to put that out. He goes into the flock system and is looking for 4-door vehicle with black on the bumper. That's basically all he had. Search, funnel it out, and instantly, and within 20 minutes, these same individuals had went to Walnut Creek, committed a crime, and the Lafayette officers were there now covering their banks to protect their citizens, and ultimately said, hey, we know who the vehicle is, here's associated with, and the individuals were going to commit the exact same crime in Lafayette within 25 minutes, and the two individuals went to jail. Just with a general description of a white car and kind of a paint on the bumper. So the filter is great.
I think because I was sort of hinting, I knew about this one case. It did happen in the afternoon. It was just after our system got up and running. And it turned out, it popped up that car was in Stockton, California. So the investigating officer called Stockton PD, had an address, they went by. The car's in the driveway. They can see through the window. They had a description of stolen goods. They looked at it and said, looks like those are stolen goods, knocked on the door and said, sir, is that your car? And the guy said, yes, you're under arrest. Right. Not only did we get the person, we found the vehicle, but we also recovered the stolen items. So that technology, I have to say, is, when we the council have said, yes, we're going to invest in those, that has proven to be a good tool, prevention, and also to get case closures, because that's one of the things. Nationwide, barely 11% of crimes are solved. Countywide, about 17. Where are we at in Danville? I think you have a report in front of you. You're going to be sharing this with the public here.
Going between the town council, I believe tomorrow night, and looking at some of our crimes. And the Danville clearance rate, we solved, we had 2 robberies, and we solved one of the 2. Now, not to say that we won't solve the other one, but we've solved
so far.
We had 12 assaults last year. We solved 83% of those.
Wow.
24 burglaries. Nationwide, the national average is about 10%, and we solved close to 40% of those. Vehicle theft, we're double the national average. They're 15%, and we're close to 30%.
Not double the national average in theft, but in what we solve.
Yes, thank you very much for the correction. That's exactly right. In our solve rate. And so, right. Just having these tools make it able to solve crimes. I mean, this report shows, and my predecessors have started the numbers, but you go back to the number of crimes in 1995, there was 829 crimes in 95. Well, last year in 2025, there's 257. So essentially, you're 1/4 or 4 times less likely to be a victim of crime in Danville today in 2025 versus in 1995. So it really is.
It's a big difference.
It's a big
and we
difference.
didn't have the technology.
We didn't have the technology.
And truthfully, with changes in legislation, it's actually made the prevalence of the ease of making crimes and getting away with it much easier. But the counterbalance has been, bottom line, is this technology
That's
investment.
exactly right. When you think that, petty theft used to be $400, $450, and now, it's $950. Well, that $950, is that really petty?
And that's kind of determined as street value, not necessarily the cost of the item originally. Yeah, I guess there's a debate about that. Bottom line is, though, I think that's what has made played a big role in not only our officers having the tools, but having the pride in their own community to be able to solve crimes. And the more you solve, the more it gets out there and, beyond Danville borders, that we're here to solve crimes. You're not going to get away with it.
That's exactly
I think that's a strong message.
Another thing, you talk about the technology. Our vehicles, a lot of the newer vehicles have technology and GPS in them. And so if we can associate people with a vehicle, and then if we can write warrants to get the information from the vehicles to say, well, this vehicle was here at these dates and times. We've seen that a lot of our criminals actually will go into the neighborhoods and come into town 1 or 2, 3 times ahead of time and kind of do a trial run. And it helps us to solve, paint the picture. Hey, they were in town these days and trial runs before they actually committed some crimes. Or quite frankly, maybe they committed crimes those days. We just were caught them for that one time on the last time here. But again, that technology allows us to really track our individuals of why they're here. Cell phones are another one. We can write specific warrants with their cell phones down to just, feet, square feet. One specific crime, who was, there was a horrible crime ultimately, and we were able to identify, get the grid coordinates within the street. So who was in town that showed between 2 o'clock in the morning and 2:35 in the morning? There should not many people are in town driving on a public roadway, it narrows it down pretty quickly.
Right.
So if you go from don't know, no idea how many to down to now there's 5 cars that went through that. Now we can narrow down pretty quickly to those 5 individuals on which one was our thief that led to the arrest.
So I think the other thing that I hear and have a sense of is that with technology, and I know Danville, we're one of the first in Contra Costa County, but it did exist elsewhere. But now we see City of San Ramon, many other communities. Does that play a role in helping keep not only Danville safe, but the other cities? The more of us that have this technology, is it easier to share? And does that sort of transition itself into sort of regional cooperation and sharing of information?
I think that's you're exactly right, sir. In the fact that think of the flock. If we have a flock of birds of 5, that's great. Well, we have a flock of birds of 20 or 100 or 200. That network, and think of each one of those birds is a city or a town that has this network. And again, the more we enter information into our flock system, our data, it keeps Danville safe. It keeps San Ramon safe. It keeps Walnut Creek safe. And collectively, because our individuals don't just come to one city and commit crime. As your police department, we were recently down in Los Angeles, because we had a car that came up from Los Angeles, committed some crime, and then went back down to Los Angeles. Well, we entered it into the the statewide system using the flock and everything else system. Ultimately, in LA agency gives us a call. Hey, we have your car. Okay. Hold that car. We'll be down tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So I sent my, officer down there, and they processed the car, and we used the Contra Costa County Crime Lab, and they processed the car for DNA, and hopefully that leads to an arrest.
That's fast too.
Fast.
They really can do that fast now, which it's almost like what people say, well, I watch it on television, and they come back with the DNA results before the end of the program.
Right.
Well, we're getting pretty close to that.
It's getting closer.
Yeah, it's interesting that, again, the technology, I think what I personally, as mayor and council member and all of us that have been here, we appreciate you as the chief, those before you, that you say, hey, look, I need to focus on several cases, and I want to hire temporarily, bring in a couple of detectives, because we're going to go after these people. Right. And you've done that. I remember one case that we actually found the person all the way in Florida, and it happened to be an officer just that morning before he started his round, just happened to see. Now, out of all the thousands in the nation, he just happened to remember that one, saw the person on the street, and within minutes made the connection all the way back to Danville. Chief said, I'm sending out officers. We got him convicted. Person went to jail. Yeah. So is that something that has helped not only in closure rates, to be able to have that ability to pull in those detectives? And I know I would ask you, is that a cost-effective solution? And it is a value proposition that you think is important to our community?
Absolutely, 100%. You can't put a price on safety. And so if I can throw more resources and throw more detectives and put more emphasis on solving some of these crimes, maybe it's in Florida, maybe it's out of state, or a Southwest flight down to LA for 2 people and back, there and back. Yeah, it's a long day for those officers, those individuals, but if I can solve some crimes, and we solve some crimes. I was dealing with one suspect. We're in Sacramento, and the dad's talking to us like, why are you guys coming all this way to talk to me, to my son? Like, we have the time. We have the time, and we want to emphasize to our community that's important that, well, if you go 20 minutes away, we're not going to worry about you.
We're going to follow all these leads.
We're going to go to the ends of the earth to solve the crime, because if you've been victimized, you need some closure. And if we can say, hey, the individual who broke into your house or broke into your car or stole your car or assaulted you, well, we have we've arrested them. We presented the case to the district attorney's office, and you get some mental health closure. You can't put a price on that.
I was going to say, and we have to really give a big thanks to Sheriff David Livingston and Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office in allowing us to make those requests, and they have honored all that I've ever heard of. And that is a great flexibility to give you the extra tools and help keep our community safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, as the mayor and the town council, giving us the flexibility to do our job, and you're not so regimented and rigid. I mean, hey, you give me hey, Tom, do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Solve some crime. And I'm like, okay. And that's what we're going to do is
And prevent them.
prevent them.
But if they do get through our safety net, we're definitely going to solve that crime.
Absolutely.
So one of the other areas I think it might be worth talking about, and I think you sometimes call it complacency. And from a policing point of view, what does that mean, and how does that affect our community?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Even though we are the safest city, it doesn't mean that crime doesn't happen in Danville.
Right.
We're less likely to have crime in Danville than our neighboring cities, which is great. But there's certain things we can do to make ourselves a little less likely to be a victim of a crime. One of those things would be locking our cars. We know that. We lock our house. We know that.
Don't leave the keys in your car, in other words.
You know what? You'd be surprised how
The majority of our car thefts are with the keys in the ignition.
Yes. That's unfortunately that's exactly.
I
the
laugh.
fact.
It's not funny if it happens. But it's sort of, I think, from a policing, well, maybe next time you don't want to leave your keys in.
And actually, it's the first question we ask. Do you know where your keys are? And often it's, I left them in my car. Where's your wallet at? I left it in my car. So again,
Let's help ourselves.
Let's help ourselves out. We're not trying to help out our thieves here.
Okay.
So another one is, our purses and our shopping bags. If we can put the things in the trunk and then drive somewhere else and then get out and walk somewhere else, versus park, put our purse in the trunk, and then go shopping. Well, if you have ill intent, some of our thieves are just sitting there quietly. Oh, I've seen that individual put their purse in the back seat, behind the seat. It only takes a couple of seconds to break a window and to steal that purse. So I'm just asking to remind the public to, not to be paranoid, just to be aware of your surroundings and take a second to put our bags in the trunk and then drive somewhere.
Right. I think also when you, about not having your keys, I think one of the things we talk about that the VIPs do, because I was actually one of those people, to confess, that if they see your garage door open, they might come up and knock on your door and just check if somebody around if they're not. Well, my garage door had a fault, and when it went down as I was driving out, that was good, and I turned and left. It hit something and bounced back up, and my back door is unlocked. So fortunately, they were able to figure out whose house it was. They called, and we were able to relock the door. That complacency was on us. We always had a bad habit not locking the door to the garage.
Yes. I recall interviewing one criminal, and his thing he liked to do was to break into cars. Okay, usually in driveways. I'm talking to him, and I'm like, trying to get in his brain a little bit. And I'm like, well, what do you do? He's like, well, I'm looking for change. I'm looking for money. Okay. He's like, but if I see a garage door opener, I push it. And if it opens up, then I prowl around the garage door, inside the garage. And then I'll try the house.
Back door.
And I'm like, why are you doing that? He's like, because what do most people do? And this is from a criminal that ultimately I arrested and everything out in jail. He's like, I open that garage door because most people, when they walk into their house, what is the first thing they do when they walk into the garage, into the kitchen? They put down their keys, they put down their wallet, they put down their purse.
Easy theft.
Easy theft. He's like, I'm not prowling around the rest of the house, but I'll go into the kitchen and I'll steal the keys. I'll
Get
steal
out fast.
In and out. So just a reminder, little things add up. They can keep yourself safe.
So complacency is one of those things that we can all fall victim to ourselves and our own habits, and that by just being a little cautious and smart, even though we don't feel safe just because we're the safest city, be smart and keep us safe.
Absolutely. It's like the seatbelt, As long as we form those habits, we put on our seatbelt every single time. We form those habits of putting our packages and our things in the back, in the trunk. Our gifts or the Amazon packages, if we can get those on a timely basis. Because, not that you have to get it the minute it gets delivered because of our different schedules, but if we can get those so they're not staying there overnight, because some of our individuals are driving around at night looking for packages that have been left out there.
It reminds me also on the garage door issue is about, the tools that all of us as individual homeowners can do. I know I have a camera system. And what role for prevention and for solving cases to the home cameras? Are those worthwhile for people to invest? And can they interface with our police department? And how do they do that?
Absolutely. Now, the public can and HOAs can purchase the flock system, which would be great. But or even if you just have a Ring camera, which is great. Now, we might not. You might set up different alerts so that you get triggered an alarm that somebody breaks your little perimeter that you can do with the Ring, and other manufacturers have that, and then you get an alert and say, hey, what's going on? But by having video evidence helps us solve crimes.
And so a person can actually, we can't access their video, but they can tell us if they'll put us on, we can get them on a list where they will, our office will know that there is a camera in that house.
That's correct.
We can't access it. Only with their permission, they'll give it to us.
That's correct. And when we have crimes in the area, often we will canvass the neighborhoods asking for, hey, do you have video camera, video surveillance? And will you check your cameras for this time frame because we're looking for this? Oh, I can do that. And then, hey, here's my business card, detectives. And so that way, ultimately, allow us, even if one had one of our flocks in the immediate area, the neighborhood collectively keeps everybody else safe. Because maybe the homeowner didn't have a camera, but maybe the neighbors did. And so they, oh, look, it was a white car that drove up. And now we have a description, now we have a lead, and maybe one of our other cameras will give us a better description of the individual. It's those little breadcrumbs, ultimately, that really help us solve crimes. And cameras are just vital. I encourage every single member of the community to have a camera system of some sort on their homes. Front door, their back slider, just to give us video evidence. Another crime situation going back a couple of years, but ultimately the house was broken into. And you can see this on video, our criminals are prowling around the house and they see a camera in the living room. And then you can see them walk right to it, and they grabbed the camera, and they stared right at it. So we have a good facial picture of it. And so they took that camera, and they left with a bunch of other stuff in the house. Well, we were able to track. Instantly it's on the web, right? It's actually on the net. And they thought because they took the camera that it was localized. When we finally tracked them down,
it was up in the cloud.
It's on the cloud.
Instantly, almost.
Instantly. Yeah. And because it was on the cloud, we were actually, when we stopped that car, we found the camera in their car. Pretty good evidence for us that we got the right people.
I'm going to just grab this here. This is this fantastic report. And so the council's going to see this, and the community. It's the Town of Danville Police Department 2025 end report. And it's these statistics of which is the basis of what made Danville the safest community again. What lessons do you see from this 2025? How does it translate to 2026? Sort of challenges and things that you say, anything different? We're heading the same way, and it tells us that, hey, we've done the right things, now we're going to focus in other areas. Or what do you think?
As I look behind you, I see my predecessors of the police chiefs before me. And they, like you mentioned early on, they set the foundation. And they set the foundation of success. And I still speak with several of them today. I saw, some of them last week. Yeah. And when I have a question, I have that lifeline or phone a friend. And that's a valuable resource for me. And so I'm following, the last years as I've been here is built on their success, what they've done. The VIP program that was installed, decades ago.
But you did move us. We did technically drop by a little bit to number 2 last year. And on your watch, Chief, it did become number 1. You deserve that credit.
Well, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir. And under my watch, I really have focused on the emphasis on getting the right people here for the traffic safety. Because if we can pull over a car, that we can make the citizens a little safer because we change the behavior. We're using the 3 E's of education, enforcement, or engineering. Get everybody to slow down. Also, if my officers are doing car stops, well, they're getting out there and meeting with the public. They're, these nice things where, they're meeting the kids and they're making good impressions. They're talking to our kids on e-bikes. And hey, do you know the rules on e-bikes and e-safety make a difference? Really emphasizing that over the last year. And by doing the car stops, by getting out there, we're contacting our criminals. I don't know how many times I've heard from Alamo and San Ramon and Blackhawk, 3 communities that surround us. that because our officers were just not on the station, because they were just doing their job, quite frankly, it solved a crime, it led to an identification. So that's, again, going to my predecessors on that foundation, I'm really pushing just being out there and do your job. That's
fantastic.
Be out there and, the coffee, the cops, and go into the schools. Come on. Child isn't just
I've been to the schools with you, and I know our Street Smarts program, and we're going to have another podcast that will talk about e-bikes coming up in the future. But I think that partnership with schools, having the community resource officers on both our high schools and associates that are also on the middle school campuses, but people realize, gee, I see more cops when school starts. That's actually a conscious decision.
Absolutely.
What are you trying to accomplish when you do
so
that?
Our officers, it's a stressful time, school drop-off time and school pickup time. Every as a parent, sometimes it's not always this smooth in the morning. Things don't always follow the recipe of sleeping in late, or the clothes aren't going just well. Sometimes it's a little frantic. But just by being public in front of our schools, our officers there, just reminds everybody to go a little slower. Hey, being a little slow, being late for school, although traumatic for the first and second grader because they're late for school, if we can and remind our parents, it's okay. It's okay. Just go a little slower. We don't want an accident to happen, and to keep our little ones safe. So it's a very conscious effort to have our officers at our schools to slow everybody down. And if we have to, pull somebody over, and give a reminder, okay, we need to do that.
It's about keeping our children safe.
It's about keeping the community safe. Overall, underlining everything I do, it's about safety.
I'll confess, my wife and I moved here almost 40 years ago, and we've always lived on the west side. And my wife taught at Montero Elementary School. But the schools were impacted, so our kids had to go to Greenbrook. But in those days, nobody, even in Danville, so that's in the mid-'80s, nobody let their children walk, bike, go to school by themselves. And now for the past decade or so, that's probably the most prevalent thing, which I think is so important that police are out there when school starts up to make sure people are going slow, because the number of children walking in groups, riding their bikes, they feel safe.
Absolutely.
And having the police presence is a positive nature to that. And it's an evolutionary change that's taken several decades. And I think it's, in the San Francisco Bay Area has changed in many other communities, but particularly here in Danville, it's heartwarming to know that you can let your child walk to school. And we know that the officers in blue are going to be there to make sure they're safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you use the right word, heartwarming. It makes you feel good when you see a group of kids all going to school and walking and riding their bikes. Come on.
Walking to school hands in hand. I live in a cul-de-sac, and we're just overwhelmed recently with the changes in ownership. It's mostly young kids, and there's I think 4 girls on our cul-de-sac,
right.
And they all happen to be close in ages. They all walk hand in hand to school, and that is something you look at that and go, I think we're getting close to being that safe city that we always wanted to be.
Absolutely, I agree.
Well, I think, Chief, I just want to say on behalf of the council and our community, Chief Rossberg, to thank you and all the men and women that work for you, the policies, the techniques that you've employed, and the results that you've given us as a community, that we all feel immensely proud and that we do sleep well at night. And again, the reminder is to our listening audience that when in doubt, please make the call. And when you might get stopped to have a conversation with an officer, always remember it's about changing your behavior. And if you start off right, the officer may say, this person understands, and I'm not going to have to give him that ticket. So
absolutely. And again, sir, thank you very much to the town council for giving us the latitude, to do our job. Thank Sheriff Livingston and the sheriff's office for giving us the tools and the training and the resources so that we can have the best professionals down here serving the Danville community. Because it's not about writing the tickets; it's about changing behavior and keeping the community safe.
Absolutely. Chief Rossberg, I'm going to shake your hand and say thank you. Thanks for joining the podcast today.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks. All right. Well done.